Hey folks, today's quote comes from Gladys. In dangerous testing environments, the Enrichment Center promises to always provide useful advice. For instance, the floor here will kill you. Try to avoid it. Disclaimer, this is a bit of a specialized rant. Bear with me on this. Alright, so here's a brief primer on about 3 semesters of music theory and about 400 years of music history. Back in the Baroque period, around about mid-1600s, composers started to solidify what's called the tonal system, which is a basic framework that pretty much works like this. You've got some sort of starting point, which is called a tonic, which could be Frodo in the Shire, some kind of predominance, which is the whole trip to Mordor, some kind of dominant, Mordor itself, and then you get back to tonic. Back in the Shire. You can spice this all up, of course, using all sorts of fancy musical tricks, but the basic idea stays pretty much the same. We still use it in classical music, and we definitely still use it in popular music. For some examples of this, I am going to post some links over here to some of my favorite 4-chord mashups, and I'll also post those links down in the doobly-doo. From the Baroque period, fast forward about 200 years, you land in the mid to late 1800s, and this is where things start getting a little weird. Some composers, Richard Wagner in particular, start writing works that don't really have much notion of a solid harmonic foundation. And some works don't even have a solid foundation for the course of an entire 5-hour opera. Wagner, however, did use these things called leitmotifs, which you can basically think of as movie themes on crack. They're little snippets of music that stand for important things throughout the opera. Characters, places, ideas, feelings, objects, all sorts of things. They gave something listeners to hold on to throughout the opera, and while there wasn't traditional harmonic structure, there was still some kind of structure. Jump forward another 50, 75 years, and you start getting things like Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. There's a lot more dissonance, there's hardly any melody, and there's almost no recognizable harmonic structure. Then come along folks like Arnold Schoenberg, who start serializing musical composition. Instead of organizing pieces by harmonic structure, he starts putting together pieces by either timbre, which is sound quality, rhythm, and most enduringly pitch. You take the 12 tones in an octave and you rearrange them however you want into what's called a tone row. You can use this row forwards, you can use it backwards, you can sort of flip it upside down, you can flip it upside down and backwards, and you can also start it on any pitch that you'd like. And structurally, this can be really cool. You can arrange the pitches as arbitrarily or as mathematically as you'd like. But even after you organize it as perfectly as you possibly can, when you play it, it sounds really, really confused. To me, it sounds like somebody said, "Here, take this and play it." And it was a book on particle physics written in Russian, translated from the Pig Latin. The musicians then scratched their heads and said, I'm not sure how to play this, so I'm just gonna play whatever I feel like. So here's my problem with 12-tone. You need at least 3 semesters of theoretical knowledge to be able to open up a score, sit down with it, pull apart the tone rows, and to figure out how the thing is constructed. Because it seems like the beauty in it is in its construction, not necessarily in its sound. With tonal stuff, you can listen to a piece and you can identify something that's cool, but you don't need the knowledge of why it's cool to recognize the fact that it is cool. You can listen to a Beethoven piece and hear something unusual, and someone who's not necessarily musical can say, "Hey, that sounds cool. I don't know why it sounds cool, but it sounds cool." Someone with theoretical knowledge can say, "Hey, this sounds cool, and this is why," but you don't need that why to understand that it is in fact cool. The way that I understand it, with 12-tone, you need to either have written the piece yourself, or you need to be very, very familiar with the piece to appreciate it at all. Music shouldn't be so elitist and so intellectual that that the understanding is the only thing that makes it worth listening to. You should be able to listen to something and enjoy it for what it is, and if you want to understand how it works, that's fine, but it's not essential to the experience.